Let's dive into the pass game, Ryan, and the Notre Dame pass offense against the North Carolina pass defense. Similarly bad. Not a whole lot is different here. They're both neither are necessarily very good in this part of the game. I think that with Notre Dame, I think it's the competition has been different, but you can't keep using that excuse. The competition hasn't been so tough. It's not like past years where you start the season with like Michigan, Michigan State, and Purdue, right? Like it's Marshall and Cal, right? And so Notre Dame's numbers are slightly better. I win advantage Notre Dame here, but it's debatable. It's absolutely
Yeah.
debatable. It's not one where I felt like, oh yeah, Notre Dame. But they do hold an advantage in, just about every category. They're ranked higher than North Carolina in just about every discernible category in this regard, especially when you consider they have played two quality defenses so far. Advantage Notre Dame, but it's got to be a bigger advantage. This is the part of the game more than anything that has to get a lot better because teams are just going to – North Carolina is going to do what Cal and Marshall and Ohio State did and what Oklahoma State did in the second half of their game and what every team that played Notre Dame tough at the beginning of last year did. Put numbers in the box. Don't let them rip you the pass game or run game. Make Drew Pine beat you. They're going to do that. Now, is North Carolina capable schematically or skill-wise to do that? I don't know. But I would have also told you that neither was Marshall, and so – but they did. And so this is a game where the pass game, Ryan, it's a slight advantage Notre Dame, but I don't feel good about it if you're Notre Dame. I mean, this is a part of the game that is the biggest concern because if your rush offense is going early, Ryan, and you do get some success early in the ground game, North Carolina's just going to say, nope, not doing it. They're just going to start bringing fires and overloaded boxes to the point where like you're not going to have anywhere to work. If the pass game doesn't complement them more this game than it did last week, they're going to have a hard time scoring enough points to win this game. Because to your point, I don't think this is a game you win 20-17 or 24-17. I don't think it's going to be that. I mean, Notre Dame defense could play really well and hold North Carolina to 24-20 and still give up 24-27 points, right? Now, they could play lights out like they did a couple years ago. They could do that, but you can't ask them to keep holding this Carolina offense down. Eventually your offense is going to have to wake up, and the only way that happens for Notre Dame is if this part of the game right here gets a lot better in a hurry. It doesn't mean throwing 87 bombs. They've got to be more efficient. They've got to take advantage of the plays that are still there, complete passes, and then do more. Tommy Rees needs to continue to get more creative with what he's doing formationally and motion-wise and play action game and different things like that. Is if North Carolina is being aggressive, you've got to do things where you're building your pass game into your run game and vice versa. RPOs against Carolina are very successful. Play action shots can be very successful against Carolina as well. And when you get one-on-ones, don't be afraid to take them. I think that's the big thing for me is if you're not willing to take those shots, then, you're going to be in trouble. I mean, look, App State threw for 361 yards and 6 touchdowns against this defense. I mean, stop talking to me about it's a talent problem when I'm looking at that. When I'm looking at North Carolina, when I'm looking at FAMU passing for 71%, completing 71.8% of their passes and throwing for 279 yards against this North Carolina team. When I'm seeing FAMU do that, don't talk to me about talent. Don't talk to me about it's a talent problem. It's a coaching problem, and it's a player focus problem. It's a player execution problem, and it's a coach is not getting the right people. So forget all this other stuff about what you want to be offensively, and NFL stuff. And look, put your best flipping players in the field. Get Chris Tyree involved from snap one. Give Drew Pine some chances to throw the ball downfield. Stop coaching scared. Stop coaching like you're afraid your player's going to make a mistake. Put Flippin' Tobias Merriweather out there, and when he makes a mistake, you say, yeah, of course, he's a freaking freshman. He's going to make mistakes. Put Eli Raridan out there and let your talented kids go make plays. That's the only way this thing is going to work for Notre Dame is stop trying to go win with Jaden Thomas and Matt Salerno being a focal point of your offense because you want to run a bunch of stuff. Get your dudes out there. Take some chances, and then when the opportunities come for Drew Pine, he needs to hit those throws. And I think that getting last week under his belt, I think is going to be big for Drew. You got the start out of your way. You got the nerves out of your way. You got the W. Now just calm down and go be you. And I'm hoping that results in Drew getting some of the – because he did – a year ago, he's the Conor McGregor strut kid throwing TD passes against Wisconsin. And this last week, he looked like a guy that was afraid to make a mistake. Like, okay, you got that out of your way. Get back to the swagger kid. Get back to the dude that was launching bombs against Kobe Bryant and beating having Braden Lindsey beating the Jim Thorpe Award winner for a touchdown to turn a game that you were down 17-0 into a 17-13 game, right? That's what I want to see. Get back to that kid. And if you do that against North Carolina, Ryan, this right here will be a Notre Dame victory in this particular matchup. I'm not saying victory in the game, but this particular matchup. That's what they need to see. But also, Tommy Rees needs to help them by giving them the best players to work with. That's a big part of this for me too.
100%. I mean, it's a full effort here, and there's no excuses. There's not. I mean, you talked about, Brian, the first 3 games North Carolina's played. All due respect to Mr. Musa from Florida A&M. All due respect to Chase Bryce, by the way, Chase Bryce lost his top 3 receivers from last year for App State. And all due respect to Darren Granger, who's a pretty decently talented kid from Georgia State, who also, by the way, lost his most talented receiver, Sam Pinckney, last year, this offseason. If they're having that much success passing the football against North Carolina, I don't care if your backup quarterback's in for Notre Dame. I don't care. I don't care if you haven't been playing well up until this point.
Chase Bryce is a kid that had 10 touchdowns and 15 interceptions the last time he was starting as a Power 5 quarterback.
Yep.
It
illustrates. No, you're 100% right. I mean, it strengthens my opinion here, right? There's zero excuses. I don't want to. If you come out of this game and you're just like, well, we have some flaws in our passing game. We're not playing well. No, it's not an excuse against this unit. I'm sorry. It's not. You see these graphics, people, right? Like 11 touchdowns in 3 games. Brian already mentioned the 6 touchdowns that Chase Bryce threw against this team. There's 0.
Florida A&M, Appalachian State, and Georgia State.
Yes.
Repeat that again. FAMU, App State, Georgia State.
It's zero excuses, man. Zero. I don't want to hear about it anymore. This is a part of the game you have to win. You have to. There's no excuses. Yeah. I mean, Brian, you're so much more. You're not. Actually, let me backtrack for a second. North Carolina's secondary is very talented from an athleticism perspective on the back end, right? You have Tony Grimes. You have Storm Duck. You have Cameron Kelly. They have some guys in theory, but it doesn't matter because they're not good right now, right? This is a bad pass defense. There is zero excuses. I don't want to come to the post-game show on Saturday and say oh man, just not good. No, it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse. Oh, your quarterback's only making a second start. I don't care. Your wide receivers aren't playing. I don't care. There's no excuses. I'm done with the excuses for this pass offense when you're playing against this pass defense. Zero excuses. You have to get this one done.
So I think a big part of this, too, is protection. The offensive line has to give the quarterback time. We saw them do a much better job of that last week. That has to continue. I really like Noah Taylor. I do. I liked him at Virginia. He had a sack against Notre Dame back in 2019. I really like I've always liked him. Long-range kid. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy a lot, Ryan. I mean, that's been a big problem for him. He's had some injuries, but he's a good player. Miles Murphy's a kid that's got some ability as a pass rusher up the middle. Not a ton, but he's got some. Rafa Hasek is a big physical kind of plug up the middle that allows blitzers to kind of come through. So there's some talent there. It's just about, but you got to execute your game because it's not the kind of talent that it's like this. It's like Marshall. It's the kind of talent that if you don't play your game and you're not playing sound football, they're going to beat you. But it's also not the kind of talent where if you bring your A game or even your B+ game, you're going to give the quarterback time to throw. I thought the offensive line did a very good job of that in quarters 2, 3, and 4 against Cal. I keep saying Marshall for some reason. Against Cal. I thought after really the first couple series, I thought Drew Pine had plenty of time to throw. If you can continue that against North Carolina, then that's going to give him an opportunity to have some success. And look, this is not – North Carolina's got a good fan base. It's not a big stadium. I've been there. It's not a super, super loud stadium. It's a little bit of a smaller crowd situation. So it's not like, 77,000. This isn't like 110,000 people at your stadium, right? And it's a good fan base, but it's not going to be the kind of hostile environment. It's 3:30 afternoon game. It's not the kind of hostile environment that you can use as an excuse for why you weren't able to get calls in or get plays made. The reality is the opportunities are there. Notre Dame is going to have to capitalize. I think Notre Dame has the advantage going into this game, Ryan. Now it needs to turn from an on-paper matchup advantage into a real advantage. But that's only going to happen if we see some continued scheme involvement, if we see more of Tobias Merriweather and Eli Raridan using Michael Mayer in some different ways, and then starting to kind of build your pass game around what you have talent-wise instead of who you want to be. This is who Braden Lindsey is. Use him that way. This is who Lorenzo Styles is. Use him that way. And I think that's going to be a big part of it. So that's what I'm hoping that we see. It's what needs to happen. Will we see it? Remains to be seen.
I mean, we've talked about it a ton, Brian. Like the pass catchers, just in general, it's a position where you can simplify things and you can take advantage of strengths that they all have, right? I mean, I forget if we talked about this on a show, Brian, or like if we talked about it just kind of off air, but why is Braden Lindsey just running outside vertical stem routes? Why isn't he working across the middle? Why isn't he getting screens? Why isn't he doing that type of work on top of some of the other stuff he's doing, right? Like Lorenzo Styles, ask him to do everything that he's comfortable with. Michael Mayer, right. The one good thing with last week's game, although you weren't able to complete it, at least I saw him run a seam route at last week's game, right? Like I want to see all these different skill sets that these guys have, but you don't have to ask them to be something that they aren't. No. Ask them to be what they are. Because if you do it, you can compartmentalize roles and it will all fit together well. Who cares if Tobias Merriweather doesn't know the full offense? You can get him out there, you can run 3 routes, and he can give you some reps and potentially make some plays. Ask these guys to do what they do well. The same thing with your quarterback, right? I don't care who the quarterback is against this pass defense. Ask Drew Pine to do things that he is comfortable doing and get confidence into his game. You do that, and I think that Notre Dame's going to have a good day through the air. But until we see that, I'm going to have some concerns, but there's enough talent for it to happen.
Right.
Certainly.
Talent's not an excuse for this game. I'm sorry.
No,
it just isn't. Again, Jeremy Musa went 28 of 38 for 279 yards, right? Just stop with the excuses. Get it done. If you can't do it this week, then you have a coaching problem. Put Braden Lindsey in the slot. Do different. And here's the thing: you last week you had the great chance to push the ball down the field, and you didn't do it against a bunch of 5'10" corners. This week you're going up against a couple 6'1" corners. That's even more reason to get Braden Lindsey in the slot. Don't put Braden Lindsey outside all game and say, okay, dude, go run comebacks and curl routes and go routes on the perimeter in the boundary against a couple 6'1" physical experienced corners. If you do that, that's not a Braden Lindsey problem. That's a you problem, because no good coach is going to ask Braden Lindsey to do those things against anybody, much less these corners. So again, if the coaching is right this week, then I think the offense will shine.